Welcome back to my owl drawing series. In this demo, I'm gonna add more shade and contours to make the owl look more three-dimensional. In the last session, we created grid and transferred the image, the outline of great horned owl to the paper, and I already erased all the grid lines so that I can start adding more details on the owl. So that's a really important step if you are using grid method for drawing. I still have a little bit of grid lines left on purpose so that I have a little bit of a roadmap or blueprint to reference back to. And I created a copy of a reference image in grayscale by reducing the saturation down to 0 instead of using black and white filter. So if we want to create a black and white version of a reference image, I highly recommend trying to use the saturation adjustment rather than using black and white filter, especially if you're using smartphone or tablet. They have both black and white filter and the grayscale filter. So I highly recommend choosing grayscale filter. And if we're using image editor on the computer, I normally open that in a editor if you don't have a Photoshop or anything fancy like that, and you don't need it to create grayscale version of your reference image. Then I open the color adjustment and I open the saturation scale and bring the saturation scale all the way to 0 so that it becomes gray scale. Oh, okay. And today I'm still using 2B pencil. This is mechanical pencil. And instead of using regular pencil sharpener, I grinded down the lead to more angle shape. So it's more like this rather than what you might see as a result of regular pencil sharpener. So I have a piece of sandpaper, and when my pencil gets too dull, I would use sandpaper and create the flat surface in one direction. And you'll see what I mean by creating a flat surface. This way, when I tilt my pencil, I can utilize the wider surface let me show you what I mean. So I'm using the biggest and widest surface so that I can cover bigger area more quickly. And in the beginning stage, on to the paper, and I'm following the feather direction, the direction of the feathers. And at this point, I'm trying to keep the edges as soft as possible. I have my reference image displayed on my tablet on the left side of paper taped on the smooth drawing board, and I'm using my tabletop easel instead of drawing this flat on the tabletop. I prefer that way, especially for doing a demo, because I can just lean back on my chair and keep evaluating where I'm at. Because sometimes when I'm drawing on the flat tabletop surface, I get so focused and I forget about checking my drawing or my painting often enough, and I end up with the proportion kind of going awkward. So I'm just covering the dark areas that look very. So I'm just creating big dark shapes at the moment, rather than creating details and texture. So in other words, I'm not trying to create any texture on purpose at this point. And when I'm drawing rounded object like the beak, I'm following the shape instead of or diagonally, because I'm not creating cross hatching. And also, instead of drawing a long by all right. So I'm gonna cover the darkest areas. I'm still following the direction of the feathers with light touch. That will create a nice dark area without distracting texture. So in the beginning of shading, all of my pencil touch is very light and keeping the edges as soft as I can, unless I really have to, because it'll be so hard to erase, especially when I'm using dark pencil like 2B, which I'm using today. And in the drawing stage, when I really need to enhance the darkness, I would use 4B instead of 2B, but then it will be really difficult to erase if I make a mistake. So I'm trying to keep keeping my pencil stroke soft. And I'm trying to use my entire wrist rather than just the fingertip. I'm really trying to focus on where my pencil is pointing, but at the same time, I'm paying attention not to hold my breath too much. So gradually making this dark area bigger. And I'm not trying to create texture yet, but I'm following the direction of the feathers so that later I don't really have to draw every single feather, because I'm not really going for a like super photorealism. My painting style is kind of between realistic and impressionistic approach, so that's how I want to approach my drawing as well. So there's a little dark area right here. And I'm covering the entire shape that appears to be dark. Then if there's a sharp highlight, in this case between his lower beak and his neck, I would use pointy part of the eraser to create the bright line instead of painting around it. So I'm kind of thinking more like a painter, oil painter rather than regular drawing. And now this, I know the beak is very dark. So I can put a little bit more pressure. And I can also create more shadow under the chin. So I may not even have to erase too much between the beak and the neck. We'll see. And there's a shadow right here, but the border line is between the lid side and the shadow is very soft. So I'm maintaining very soft edge. And since beak is much darker than his neck, I can just overshoot into the beak on purpose. Also, the front of the beak looks much darker than the rest of the beak. I'm pushing back the chair and checking out how it's going. Okay. Because I drew the outline and the basic shapes the other in the last session using grid method. I'm more confident that the placement of the shapes are pretty much complete. So I try not to lose that, but I'm also not too afraid to overshoot my shading. I'm following the contour here. I'm also squinting my eyes quite often so that I can recognize more obvious and big shapes of different values, tonal values. Here there's small fine feathers, almost like his eyelash. So I'm shading, but I'm shading in the direction of these tiny feathers. It's almost like that over here too. I'm still keeping all the edges very soft. I'm checking my pencil and checking to see if the lead is the flat part of the lead is pointing down. Then I can cover wider area more quickly. I keep looking at my reference image as much as I'm looking at my drawing paper. I think one of the common mistakes that I see my beginning student is that they are not spending enough time looking at the model, and they are not comparing their own drawing and the difference or the model that they're using often enough. So it's not surprising that their drawing end up so different from what they meant to draw. So if the paper is not taped on this drawing board, I would rotate the paper, or I would even rotate drawing board, but it's kind of fixed in this easel for the camera, so I don't want to risk losing this spot. I'm using the margin of the paper to smooth out this triangle edge of the pencil. So right now I'm just adding shade, but since because I'm um, putting pencil marks in the direction of the feathers, it kind of look like I'm creating texture already. So whether it's intentional or not, it's important to pay attention to the direction of your pencil mark. And if this is not dark enough, I can layer and add more pencil mark. In case you're curious, I have my webcam between me and the easel, so I'm looking over the difference image on my monitor on the tablet, on the monitor of my Android tablet. On the left side of the camera, then looking down the drawing on the right side of the camera, because this paper is 6x9 and this drawing square, the canvas is only 4x4 inches, so it's very small. So I had to bring camera as close as possible, only 1 foot, which is the closest I can bring with this brand new webcam. Today I'm using Elgato face cam, and this doesn't have autofocus. It's the focus is fixed, so it works. It doesn't change the focus on the focus goes only as close as 12 inches or 30 centimeters. Now I'm layering more darkness on the really dark areas. I'm trying to connect each stroke without leaving gap. This tuft is one of the unique features that make make these great horned owls so special. So I'm enhancing the darkest areas using the flat part of the pencil. Now I'm also correcting the shape of his pupil. There's a little bit of cast shadow in his eye. Keep squinting my eyes to see which part is darker and which part is lighter in his eye. I think I need to make his pupil a little bit darker so that I can make other part darker as well. I'm rotating my pencil lead to use the sharper edge of the lead to create even darker pencil mark. I don't use this technique everywhere, only in a certain areas where I really need dark darkness. Because it's once I use the sh- sharp side of the edge, the sharp edge of the lead, it'll be so hard to erase no matter what I do. So I'm committed when I use this technique. And I'm trying to leave this side untouched before I'm done. I finish this side because I'm right-handed and I don't want to smudge what I drew. I can also use a piece of paper to cover that and protect my drawing. Okay. Now I have this piece of paper, so I can place this so I can work on the left side. So one thing that was bothering me is that there's sharp line, and I want to make it softer. So I'm using the flat face of the pencil and using short strokes. I don't like this. I'm using kneaded eraser so I can change the shape of the eraser, and I can work on even small section. And there's no sharp edge in here, so I'm tapping and just erasing the pencil mark. Okay, let's do this again. So I'm hoping to do a oil painting of this, but I wanna do a pencil study to see if it's really worth my worth painting with oils. And also it's a great exercise to draw anytime. I'm just keep lifting my pencil to check the angle of my pencil lead so that I'm not scratching the paper with sharp corner. And my intention is not to cover entire canvas, which is this 4x4 square with a pencil mark, because this is a portrait and I wanna create kind of vignette effect. So I'm not gonna put too much details on the edges of the canvas. So feathers around his head are very short, so you can make your pencil stroke short as well. They look like scale of fish. And some of the overlaps of my pencil mark, they will create kind of the illusion of the texture, or it does make texture. But I'm not doing that on purpose. It's just that what it happens. Okay, now this dark green needs to be darker. So these feathers are kind of fanning out from the center of his eye. So that's what I'm trying to follow in terms of the pencil mark direction. There's this dark spot here that I want to include in my drawing. Keep checking how I'm doing. This is very slow process. It's almost meditative. So I hope you're not falling asleep watching this. If we are watching this in recording, you can definitely change the playback speed. The more I draw, the more I keep finding the feature that I want to include. So I'm kind of keeping the balance between that temptation and what I really want to capture in my simple drawing. So I'm trying to keep it as simple as possible without making it like a photorealistic drawing. So I'm using the flat part of the pencil, but kind of pushing a little bit harder to get the darker marks. Okay, I'm gonna step back to pushing my office chair back, and leaning back and checking out what's happening on my paper. Kind of how the eye is turning out. Maybe I'm gonna spend more time on the eye, on his eyeball. I think I can make this area, this island darker, and making other darks. I'm using the edge of this oval shape of the lid to get the darkest effect. It kind of got softer, so I'm gonna add more darkness here while I'm grinding the surface, flat surface, to reveal more sharp edge. there's a little dark line coming down. So that's what I'm going after. Okay. I'm squinting my eyes to see the subtle gradation inside his in the upper part of his eye. Now this part needs to be even darker. I know it's easy to get lost which part you're working on, but that's when you need to sit back and squint eyes to see if anything jumps out and look awkward. Yeah, this part looks too light. I'm gonna darken it. See, you can find your way back very easily if you step back and squint. Okay. Let's see. This part of his beak is kind of hidden, but I know it's there. So this side, the front side of the beak is turning away from the light, so it's darker. I think this went too far out. I also want to soften the transition between the dark mark and light area, the lit area of this ear. So I'm going to erase this line. And I'm going to use very soft edge. Okay. I'm going to erase this because it's very light. See what happens if I put dark shade on his forehead. Again, I'm following the direction of these short micro feathers. I pushed it too hard. I don't like this. So this is in the shadow and darker. I'm checking my pencil lead to see if it's still nice and flat. The direction of a pencil mark is even more important right here because it's right between the beak and this big round eye, which are the focal area of this portrait. There's little dark feathers peeking out on the other side. Maybe too far out. And actually, I don't mind smudging outside of his silhouette because it kind of mimics what in the background as a dark textured background. So I'm not so concerned about keeping the background super clean anymore. Okay, so top of his head is right here, and it's maybe I want to use dark shapes to show his silhouette better. I don't like this section. Tapping it away. Right. I want to keep this side of the background light so that there's a big contrast, more contrast between the dark area of this right ear and right ear tuft in the background. Now let's see what happens if I remove more over here and make it lighter. I'm trying to create the flat big shape so I can use eraser to make sky holes if I want to. We'll see. It's too hard. filling the gaps. I think this would be easier if I were using charcoal. Yeah, I think it looks better without the background shade. I'm all for KISS principle. Keep it super simple. Maybe I would make his head a little bit darker. I'm squinting my eyes to see if there's any darker areas and not so dark areas on his forehead besides this obvious black and white patterns. I really don't want to spend too much time rendering every single feather, but I feel like this section needs to be done more carefully. And if I want to create the highlight in his eye, I need to make the surrounding part of the highlight darker. Okay. Sorry. I'm gonna try adding highlight and I'll take a break. Might have to make his pupil a little darker, but just want to see what it looks like with the highlight. The highlight, it was too big. I think it's good for now. I'm gonna take a break and work on this in the next session. Well, thank you for watching.